A wife can often be incredibly affectionate towards her children, but not super affectionate physically, emotionally, verbally towards her husband. And I got to tell you, as a couples counselor, this can really frustrate the men who are kind of on the short end of this receiving stick, if you will, of this dynamic. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about why this happens, or at least some of the reasons why this can happen. Now, obviously, there could be a myriad of issues as to why someone's not affectionate with you. When they used to be, or maybe it never was quite there. But it does kind of sting a little bit more when you see them hugging and kissing and, saying things like, I want to eat you up. You're so cute to these kids. And, to get a hug from her sometimes feels like you're, squeezing a cold fish. So why does this happen? The first thing to note is that we have parts of ourselves. In fact, there's a whole model of therapy called IFS, internal family systems therapy. And the idea is that, to put it kind of in a tongue-in-cheek way, we all have multiple personality disorder. There's a part of us that we take to work. There's a part of us that we show to our extended family. There's a part that we save for friends. There's a part we save for parties. And your wife is no different, right? Or a wife is no different. There's a part that a woman shows for her children, and it's in fact a different part of who she is. And so looking at that part and expecting that to carry over into the way that a wife might treat her husband just isn't realistic. After all, if you think of yourself at the bar drinking with a few friends, making rude jokes, that's not the kind of person that you're really going to share with your wife. There's always a slight difference. Now, typically, as you age, the difference between who you are with one group of people and another does tend to kind of blur and get, the differences get more minimal. I think people kind of get more settled into their own skin. But this usually plays a big role. Now, the one thing that doesn't change in IFS, or at least with people, I shouldn't say in IFS, is you are always going to treat your kids differently than everybody else in the world, right? There's a different relationship that's there. Sometimes that can turn hostile. It can turn toxic. There's expectations. In addition to seeing couples, I quite often will see a son and his mother, or sometimes the whole family comes into a session because they want to resolve the dynamics. So it does kind of have a permanence to it. But I will say that wrapping your head around this concept that we are multiple versions of ourselves and to accept that about a woman does help on a cognitive level, right? Because there's really two ways to approach any problem in your life. You can either accept it or try to change it. And so a lot of this has to deal with acceptance. A lot of understanding why a woman acts this way has to deal with acceptance. And if you want to change it, that's a whole different conversation, right? Instead of saying, why is she so emotional and so affectionate with our kids and not me? Really, you got to rephrase that question, leave the kids out of it altogether and say, well, I really wish she would be more affectionate towards me. Period. Full stop. End of sentence. Doesn't matter how she handles the kids, right? Now, I do want to give you other possible cognitive reasons so that you understand why this might be happening, because the more you understand, at least in my experience, the more you understand why something is happening, the easier it is for you to accept it, and the better prepared you are to know where the kind of hard stops are and what is and isn't possible. So the second reason that you might find a woman is more affectionate towards her kids than her husband is that she's emotionally exhausted. Listen, being a mom and being a woman in general has a different set of requirements and demands than being a man in this world. Especially, I can only speak to America. It's the only place I live. But I could tell you that being a woman, you tend to juggle more. I could say this with pretty a pretty strong conviction because because of the people I've seen over the last 13, 14 years or so. Women tend to keep everything juggling in their mind. So while they're helping their kid with their homework, they're also thinking about some housework that needs to get done. They're also thinking about the fight they might have had with their sister and why this person hasn't responded to them on Facebook. And oh yeah, my husband's mom's birthday is coming up and he's going to forget to get her a gift and I have to remind her. All of that's going on at the same time. A lot of women, and again, it's a sweeping generalization, but a lot of women take on this responsibility that they have to make sure everything runs well in the family. And they take on that role much stronger than men do, in a much more committed sense. And men have a much easier time checking out because they just don't see that as their job. And so that's why the absentee father is a phenomenon that's now dying off, thank God. But it was just like, well, I don't need to do anything. I mean, it used to be if your wife was having a baby, some men didn't even go to the hospital. You just were at work and so you got a phone call, hey, you had a baby. You're like, nice. And you came home to a wife who now had a baby. And that was it. That was your entire involvement. So being a woman and worrying, having anxiety about all the people in your life that you have to take care of is emotionally draining. Now, there is a certain hormonal gift or curse sometimes that women get to have a bond with their child. And that hormonal kind of reality makes them show up in a bigger way for their children. And that's the way it's supposed to be, right? The love that a mom has for her child, especially when it's healthy, is the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a gift with nothing there's no expectation of anything in return. And that's really what children deserve. Yeah. But a husband, it's a reciprocal relationship. And so if she's feeling any kind of exhaustion, you will get the short end of that stick. Now, connected to that is another possibility, which is maybe there's unresolved resentment in the relationship. It's hard to stay mad at a 3-year-old who has a smile that can light up the whole world because they made a mess. So, 2, 3-year-old kids, even teenagers, there's a minimal amount of damage a child can do because at the end of the day, you've raised them, you've wiped their butts, you know all their secrets, and and you're smarter and you've just been on the earth longer than them, and so you know what kind of tricks they're going to pull, and they don't have the same capability of cutting as deep. Now, as they get older, that changes. You'll find that, especially when you're dealing with parents in their 60s and their 50s, sometimes 70s, sometimes the most painful thing can be things that a child says to them. But when they're young, and this is really what we're talking about, I mean, you're not going to grab your 30-year-old son typically and go, mwah, 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 mwah. I mean, that's just not going to happen in most cases. But when they're younger and you're kind of mushy and gushy like this, they really can't hurt you that much, right? There's an old Yiddish expression that translates to small kids, small problems, big kids, big problems. And so you can't really hold resentment against children that much. Now, there are exceptions, right? There are exceptions, especially if your child has some mental issues or neurodiversity that's incredibly hard to deal with, or if there was a tragic accident. But by and large, for the most part, you're going to be able to forgive them. Not so much with your partner. It just doesn't work that way because they can cut deeper. And you expect them to show up better, right? There's a lot of forgiveness that comes with children. And so with that forgiveness comes a very generous sense of love. And that's what happens. But if you're the husband and you guys fight every second of every day, and then you see her go and hug the kids, and you're like, why don't I get it? Well, that might be because you don't know how to apologize. You don't know how to repair the relationship. You don't know how to hold court, really hold space for her to get things off her chest so that you can understand the pain, practice empathy. There's lots of ways to process through resentment, and you're probably not doing any of them well. Because if you do even just one of them really well, you're going to get past a lot of that resentment. And then the last thing I think that's worth mentioning is that relationships change. Relationship dynamics change. And so maybe this is just a different shift of focus of where someone feels needed. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people who are pregnant saying, I don't, I know I want to be a mom, but I don't really feel like a mom. And then suddenly they have the baby and they're like, oh, I'm a mom now. Or sometimes it comes late. And, it's like a year and they're like, now I really feel like a mom. But at a certain point, the focus and the shift of what your life is really about can sometimes then move over to the child. And that has a lot to do with why you might receive less affection, because the focus just isn't there. Now, how you solve this, how you change this behavior, right? It's a little bit more of an involved conversation, and it's kind of customized depending on if there's resentment or if there's emotional exhaustion or sometimes even physical exhaustion. But the first thing to do is to talk and say, listen, I know that you might be exhausted or you might have resentment towards me, but I'd really like to just let you know that I'm feeling unfulfilled emotionally because I'm not receiving affection. And if there's something I'm doing that's making that hard for you to give, I'd like to fix it. Can we talk about it? That simple phrasing can usually go quite a long way. I hope this was helpful. My name is Dr. Jon Dabach, and I'll see you next time.